Okay, so hi everyone for joining our event one, Introduction to Human Trafficking. So, as Ada mentioned, I am the head of events, and as in events team, we have Raina, Nabila, and Meta. We also have Ada as our president, and we also have Visa in legal team. We have Tracy in PR team. So in this event, we'll be introducing our events and our organization. We also are going to share some tips and how do you prevent human trafficking.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ada, the president of Future Unchained Toronto. And the first thing that I want to talk about is if you look at this GIF that I made right here. So just in January 2022 alone, the Toronto Police Station have posted 115 news releases related to missing persons. And on January 14th, two people were engaged in a 6-month-long trafficking case. They were arrested, but just 4 days after, two adult men and women went missing. So it's a lot of cases are happening in this Toronto community. However, I have found that not many youth organizations were talking about this issue, and so, a group of young students in California, the United States, came together and founded Future Unchained in the hope of being able to spread awareness, educate the public, and empower the victims of human trafficking. And later, I joined and set up Future Unchained Toronto, which focuses on our community. So, our community in Toronto, Canada. When I first recruiting, one of the most frequently asked questions was, how are we going to are we going to confront and fight traffickers? And at first I thought it was a really weird question because of course not. We're just students, not police officers, right? But then I soon understood where this question came from. Nobody knew what we can do. So therefore, Future Unchained we have set a curriculum to let you know what we can do to help. So if you go into futureunchained.org, you can see how we can have a set of curriculums. We have our method, and there are different chapters to it. And if you look at start section 1, you can start reading here. And we will also be talking about these sections in our future events as well. So the next thing that I wanted to say is that the US chapters, they hosted many in-person events in a variety of cities in California, US. However, our Toronto chapter will stay online for at least this rest of the school year, so you can join every event that we have. And now that you have a slight idea of who we are and what we do, here comes the real question. What is human trafficking? And I will let Duke take over the floor again to talk about what human trafficking is and the different sections and parts of human trafficking.
So I believe everyone has a question. So what is human trafficking? Human trafficking is the transporting of victims for monetary, labor, or sexual intentions. It is considered modern day slavery. And in this video, I'll show you guys what is human trafficking.
Over 20.9 million men, women, and children are victims of human trafficking. But do you know what human trafficking actually is? In a small, sleepy town, people are dreaming. But not everyone's dreams will come true. Human traffickers prey on people's dreams and lure them away for their own benefit. How do they do this? Human trafficking doesn't happen all of a sudden. It's a process. First, traffickers act. This includes recruiting victims, transporting them to the place where they'll be exploited, hiding them from authorities, and receiving victims from other traffickers. So why don't the victims run away or say no? Because traffickers use different means. This includes threatening or forcing victims to do what they want, abducting or deceiving the victims, and abusing power. Sometimes traffickers promise small payments or benefits to get the victim to cooperate. And why are the traffickers doing this? The purpose of trafficking is exploitation. Traffickers take advantage of victims for their own profit or benefit. This is human trafficking. This man's neighbor tells him that he has a great job for him on a very safe construction site and that he'll be paid a lot of money. With more money, he can make his dreams come true. He agrees to take the job. A few days later, the neighbor's friend picks him up and they drive to the construction site. It's a very long way from his home. This man is put to work immediately without any training or protective equipment, without enough to eat or drink, and with very few breaks. After many months, he's only been paid a fraction of what he was promised. He knows he's been tricked, but he doesn't have enough money to get home. This man is a victim of human trafficking. He was recruited by his neighbor and tricked into thinking he was going to work at a safe construction site for fair pay. Instead, he was forced to work long hours in unsafe conditions for almost no money, while others benefited from his exploitation. One day, while looking for jobs online, this woman comes across an opportunity to work in a restaurant in a big city. Her application is successful, and her new employer arranges for her travel there. She is met at the airport and driven to a part of the city that looks nothing like she expected. The car pulls up to a building. The door is shut and locked behind her. She is made to perform sex acts against her will. She is trapped. This woman is a victim of human trafficking. She was transported by a trafficker from the airport to the location of the job. When she arrived at the location and realized it was not the restaurant job she was expecting, the traffickers used force to keep her there. She was then exploited for forced sex work. This 14-year-old boy on school break is approached on the street by a woman who looks trustworthy. She tells him that she needs workers at her factory, and she promises him lots of money. He brings her to meet his parents. They are so happy for him. He'll now be able to save money for school. The woman drives him to the next town. They pull up to an old building. There is someone waiting for him. As he is led inside, the nice lady drives off. The factory isn't anything like she described. There are lots of people working, including many children. He works all day, and after just a few hours of sleep, he starts again. He is sad. This isn't what he expected. He misses his family. After weeks, he still hasn't received any salary or been allowed to contact them. He is trapped. This boy is a victim of human trafficking. He was tricked by the woman who recruited him on the street. He was then received by a trafficker when he arrived at the factory and exploited by being forced to sew clothing. For anyone under the age of 18, only the act and purpose matter for it to legally be a case of human trafficking. Understanding that human trafficking doesn't happen all at once, but instead is a process of act, means, and purpose, helps us better identify victims and trafficking trends. People everywhere are dreaming and looking for opportunities to make those dreams come true. Human trafficking is happening all around us. Will you recognize it when you see it? To learn more, visit iomx.org.
In the videos, we clearly see that human trafficking is equal to act plus means and plus purpose. So act is to lure a victim into trafficking, for example, recruitment through a job. And means is to trap the victim so that they can report the trafficker through ways like threats and force. And purpose is the motive, which can include monetary benefits. And the main goal of human trafficking is to exploit individuals to gain a financial or material profit. And we clearly see in this video that the first man is incentivized by a job, therefore gaining him from more cash for his dreams, and this is the act. And he is transported to a far city, but can't leave due to a lack of money, and this is the means. The trafficker gets free labor without following safety guidelines, and this is the purpose. And criminals prefer human trafficking since it's highly profitable and they can earn profits multiple times, as opposed to drugs which can only be sold once. And just beware, human trafficking can happen to any race, any age, and any gender, whether it's women, men, or children, or elders. So there are 25 million people in the world affected by human trafficking, and 95% of victims were women and girls. And 2 of 3 people of incidents in Canada between 2009 and 2019 occurred in Ontario. And 43% of victims were between 18 and 24. And lastly, 73% of victims were coerced by someone blaming you. And we are also going to introduce 3 types of human trafficking, including labor trafficking, sex trafficking, and organ trafficking. So now I'll pass to Raina from our events department.
Yes, so let's talk about labor trafficking and look at a case study. So we have a video here.
Yep.
My parents joined a religious organization in the early 90s. They've given their time, money, and ultimately their children to this organization. In summer of 2002, my mother received a phone call from one of the executive representatives of the group. The lady was calling to inform my parents that it was the will of God that my brother and I began our pilgrimage into manhood. And part of that meant moving to the headquarters of the organization located in Kansas City, Kansas. So the following evening, our bags were packed and we were off to begin this new life. When we got there, we were taken to meet the strangers who would transport us. After giving our parents our hugs and saying our goodbyes, we discovered that our arranged transportation was on the back of a 18-wheeler semi-truck. We rode nearly 600 miles on the back of a truck as if we were packages being sent out for delivery. When we arrived to Kansas, we were taken to the place we would stay, a small apartment. There were dozens of boys and men packed like sardines. We were immediately put to work, dictated on how to dress, how to speak, how to walk, what to eat. And to disobey meant severe punishment, slashes with a rod or paddle, days, sometimes weeks of fasting, or worse, beaten till bones were broken, face swollen, anything that would remind the other kids what happens when you disobey. I started out as a dishwasher in back of the restaurant owned by the traffickers. I would work countless hours a day, restlessly reporting in at 8 a.m. and not leaving sometimes till 3 a.m. the next morning. One time, I showed up late for work, a habit I soon regret making, because almost immediately upon walking through the doorway of the small diner, I found myself on the floor bleeding after being hit in the mouth with a yellow page phone book. Attempting to stand to my feet, the man began to beat me on the back until I passed out. Acts of violence were not of rare occasion at all. A good friend of mine named Najee found himself being questioned by 4 men about something he should not have done. Almost immediately, without notice, one of the men threw a punch that brought Najee to the floor. The other 3 men eagerly followed up with blows of their own. They concluded their beatdown section by kicking him down a flight of about 13 stairs. To add insult to injury, one of the guys literally poured salt on Najee's wounds. I was just 12 years old, shocked, saddened, and terrified of the possibility of facing the same consequences as my older friend. Till this day, I'm still unsure of what Najee did wrong. But one thing was made clear to me: my well-being was no longer in my parents' hands. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Elijah, why didn't you just pick up the phone and call your parents and tell them what was going on? If the traffickers allowed me to use the phone, the call was monitored by the executives to be sure that not too much detail was given as pertains to what was going on. And so the next 9 years that followed, without my parents' permission, I was taken to New Jersey, Georgia, Maryland, and places all around the country that the trafficking organization owned property. It began to seem like every year I was being taken to one place to the next. And everywhere I went, the living arrangements were the same as what I experienced in Kansas. Finally, the last place I worked before escaping the group was Harlem, New York. While working in the trafficker's New York restaurant, I had received word that a friend of mine had died. Message of her death began to spread like wildfire. Feeling bombarded by all the questions surrounding the young teen's death, the founder of the organization made an announcement of it. In a nutshell, he said that the young girl wanted to die, and she killed herself by becoming ill. It seemed that most people accepted that explanation, but not me. I knew better. How do you go from being well to 2 months later being ashes in an urn? Not soon after, I learned the truth. My friend pleaded that she did not feel well. She begged to be taken to the hospital. They forced her to work through her illness until eventually her immune system shut down. We were not allowed to seek professional medical help. That meant no annual physicals, no dentist, and no treatment for illness. In her case, she was allowed to go to the ER, but by the time they began treatment, it was too late. Parents all around the country joined this forced labor, human trafficking ring disguised as a religious organization, willingly sending their children off, placing them in an unfortunate situation. My childhood was ripped from me. When I finally got out, it was a culture shock, to say the least. People would ask me about my upbringing and my life, and I would tell them things that sound good to avoid talking about what I went through. But it wasn't until I embraced my truth that I actually started to heal. And you know what? I learned I am not that unique. We all have things that we've been through that has caused us to dare ourselves to be ourselves. Fortunately, I have overcome most obstacles that have stood in my way. Good therapy, developing friendships, education, and work related to survivors like myself makes me thrive. By far, my greatest assets are my family and friends. When I fall to moments of sadness, nightmares, anxiety, and confusion, it is them who lift me up. And although moments and years of my life stolen could have wrecked me, I have gotten up stronger than ever.
Okay, so let's talk about that video. So as we said, human trafficking consists of 3 different parts. First, there's the act. So in this case, the act would be persuading the victim's parents that it would be beneficial to move out, and they were lied to and told that it was a religious place. The next is means, and so one of the means was that all calls are monitored, and also the violence that was used. And the purpose would be labor that costs almost nothing, so free labor. So there are an estimated of 16 million victims in Elijah Muhammad's shoes worldwide. And to further understand labor trafficking, let's look at some statistics. So 16 million people are exploited in private sectors. 4 million are in forced labor imposed by state authorities. 58% of victims are women and girls, and $150 billion are estimated to be earned annually through labor trafficking.
The next up, we have sexual trafficking coming from the branching of human trafficking.
Human trafficking is a growing problem, and it's taking place right here in the GTA.
Police are now dedicating special teams to the issue. As Philip Lee Shannock reports, much of their focus is on the 401, which police say pimps are using as a major trafficking corridor.
So he was, in my eyes, my boyfriend. And then things were really great in the beginning. He was very good to me.
She goes by the name Olivia, and she's asked us to keep her real name and identity hidden.
And things changed, and he became abusive emotionally and physically, and through his own manipulation, he kind of got me into sex work.
At first, he told her it was just so they could have their dreams. So she met with men who answered an online ad and had sex with them for money. It's a life she was trapped in for 3 years.
You don't hear about it as like a relationship and the complexities that it can be.
She spent days in a hotel room, seeing no one except her pimp and clients. Last year, the guy she thought was her boyfriend was convicted of human trafficking. It's a story the head of this investigative unit dedicated solely to human trafficking cases has heard before.
Quite often we see that she may have clients 5 to 10 a day, 6 to 7 days a week. And she now knows that she has no real person to turn to. She can't tell her parents that this happened. She can't tell her friends. She's been isolated, moved down the 401. She's out of her area of comfort.
And the busy 401 corridor with its many hotels and motels plays a big role in human trafficking operations. This specialized therapist for youth who've been involved in the sex trade says hotels along the highway are used by pimps to rotate their stable of girls.
We're going to go here for 3 days, and we're going to go here for 3 days. And it's in terms of trying to not get caught, and also to keep it's a freshness of new people, of new young people to service the clients.
Now, Olivia meets with others who've escaped human trafficking, who are struggling with the effects of being brainwashed and ultimately exploited. Philip Lishanok, CBC News, Toronto.
Right now, expanding on the video that we just saw of Olivia, we know we've been doing this. So human trafficking is broken down into act, means, and purpose. So the act was that the husband promised Olivia to her dream, but the means was that he locked Olivia through manipulation, and the purpose, trafficker gained money through Olivia being a sex slave. Now, sexual trafficking targets the most vulnerable people, starting from runaway children, marginalized, discriminated, and homeless. To put into perspective, there are an estimated 4.8 million victims of sexual trafficking worldwide. And to add on, here are more statistics. So 3.8 million adults are victims of sexual trafficking. 1 million kids are involved in this industry, and 12 to 13 is the age where most victims first enter this industry, and 99 billion estimated dollars were earned through sexual trafficking.
Yep, next we have a short case study of organ trafficking. So here's a little video of a BBC undercover to the human organ traders.
Cairo, one of the Middle East's main business hubs, but now a darker trade is thriving. The network is wide, from migrant smugglers to some of Egypt's leading doctors. A crumbling health system and shortage of organs has meant that people wait for years, so turn to the black market, where profits are huge.
If you've got money, anything is possible.
This man matches up those wanting to buy with those desperate enough to want to sell their organs. Conflict in the Middle East has made his job easier. What he is doing is illegal, but he now claims to feel remorse, so explains the trade to us.
People came to me wanting to sell their organ to pay to be smuggled abroad. Money never lasts long, but the promise of a safe life and opportunities overseas are a pretty good incentive.
Organ donation is complicated here. No money can change hands, and you can only donate to someone from the same nationality. But there are always ways to get around the law.
If someone's got dark skin, for example, they could pass as Sudanese. The brokers just make him a fake passport. You can buy the passports from the streets. It's really not a big deal.
Authorities claim they're trying to crack down on this trade. Last year, they conducted a raid of multiple clinics, resulting in the arrest of 45 people, among them doctors and nurses. Millions of pounds were recovered, yet for many, the profits outweigh the risks. We're on our way to meet a doctor who we've been told works as a surgeon within the organ trade. We're going in undercover, and our story is that my father's in desperate need of a kidney transplant, but can't find a donor. Medical costs for a legal transplant are around $3,000, but we've been told to say we'll pay whatever's necessary. This is illegal. Dr. Ahmed Mustafa works for the police. He reassures us that he can help.
اوكي ماشي والله لو الاوبشن موجود هتلاقيني اوتوماتيك على الرقم ده بنكلمك عشان بجهز نفسي بص انا هجيب كاش هتبقى تقريبا حدود 40000 دولار 40 كل شيء شامل ايه بالظبط شامل كل شيء هو مش متبرع بياخد فلوس في ايده دي طبعا بتتساب في المعمل يعني هو هينزل يعمل عمليته تمام وبعد كده تمام انت هتبقى عارف التبرع بتسيبه فين اوكي يعني انا جيت معي 40000 اعطيك اياهم بتدوم لنا ولا لمين نديهم؟ انا هاخد 20. شكرا.
People come from across the Middle East to buy kidneys. This man was on the government waiting list for months, until his health deteriorated to the point that the family decided to buy a kidney.
لما تعبت ما كنتش عايز اعمل عمليه مبدئيا كنت باخد مثلا بس انا ما رجعتش الحل دوت لما لقيت قدامي واحد عمل عمليه ده هو ده الحل الوحيد قدامي عشان ان انا ارجع تاني للحاله الطبيعيه اللي انا كنت فيها. العمليه الظاهر هي قانونيه بس في الباك جراوند فيها حاجات
I ask him, what if something happens to the donor? Will I not be held responsible?
وزارة الصحة ما تقبلش الورق بتاعها إلا لما يكون في محضر الاسم مسجل، الراجل ده هيتبرع.
والظاهر إنه مش واخد فلوس، لكن الطبيعي إن أنت مديه.
مقرر على ذلك إنه ما خدش فلوس.
During our investigation, we learnt of a man who died after selling his kidney. The risks are huge, but so is the desperation for a better life. And with no control in place,
yeah, so from this video, we can see the same things. So the first, the act, organ trafficking is highly profitable. So many people, they willingly donate their organs. So basically, they willingly join and sell their organs for this. However, you know, they say that they willingly did it, but if there was an alternative, they definitely wouldn't have been involved in this industry, right? And that means why does nobody report it? Because the donor, the customer, the person in the middle, the trafficker, everybody knows that organ trade is illegal. And a lot of people, they think of organ trafficking, they think of kidnapping, which there are a lot of cases. In fact, even most cases, they came from like kidnapping, but it's not that willingly trading organs for money is not a problem, right? Because you're technically not supposed to sell your body off for money. And the purpose is to earn money. Everyone here wanted to earn money, and the customer here wanted to like, they wanted their life. So it's pretty, this one is the most conflicting between like human values and like ethics. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting one that we will be focusing in April, May. Yeah. So organ trafficking, it also has the largest underground market and the population of potential victims. So young children, marginalized people, like everyone, like every other case, because when you are marginalized, you are homeless, you're immigrants, you are to a place that you don't have a lot of connections, you don't have a lot of people that you know, you are basically, even if you disappear, nobody knows. That's for kidnapping. And even if problems come to you, it's not going to create a really big problem. Like, for example, like from the organ donor's perspective and the trafficker's perspective, it's not going to create a big problem. For example, if they trafficked something from a really rich person, it's going to create such a big local news. But for people who have low income, who are marginalized, they can keep the news quiet and nobody can find them. So this is why. And also donors, or like the victims, they are also in need for money, so they are more easily to get lured into this organ trade. And there are actually no law in Canada that explicitly bans Canadians from taking part in transplant tourism. So what transplant tourism is that you go to another country to buy organs. So if I went to buy organs from another country, there is actually no law that explicitly stops me from doing so. And that is a big problem, because if we are legal, well, like not legally allowed, but if we are not allowed to have international trading, then imagine how big an underground market would have for even domestic trading. So this is a really big problem. And some stats that we have is Canada's actually one of the top 10 global importer of organs, and 10% of all worldwide traded transplanted organs involved a trafficked organ, and there is 1.14 organs traded per hour. So that's like 10,000 organs per year. And it's estimated that about 1.2 billion US dollars is earned through organ trafficking. And next we have, how can we prevent human trafficking?
So after learning about all the different types of trafficking and how it's caused, let's learn about how it could be prevented. The most effective method of prevention are to advocate and educate on human trafficking and to strengthen laws and protection systems that protect targeted individuals. So the first step is identification. Identifying human trafficking is essential to combat it. Common indicators are someone frequently occupying the victim, tattoo/brand marks that have the trafficker's name or symbol, a sudden accusation of luxuries, feeling of hopelessness, clothing that is inappropriate to weather or victim's age.
Yep, for the last one, we actually wanted to make a clarification. So when we say that we're not blaming the victim, what we was trying to say was that, for example, if you see a 20-year-old lady who is really at a young age and she's wearing like a really worn out clothes that is like have holes and all that stuff in winter, yeah, you're probably gonna think something's wrong. So this is a thing that that may identify that she's a victim of human trafficking, and it goes to other ages and genders as well.
And to further on see if they are a victim, the U.S. Department of State recommends asking these questions. These are the lists, but I'll say a couple of them. The first question you could ask is, can you leave your job if you want to? Have you been hurt or threatened if you tried to leave? And where do you sleep and eat? Just to like add on and see if they are victims or not. And to prevent more further trafficking from occurring, the best thing to do is reporting. So the places that you could report are to call 911 and the Canadian Human Trafficking Hotline, which is there and it's available 24/7, and the Ontario Human Trafficking Hotline.
So firstly, we'll have a safety presentation in February, and then a labor trafficking event in March, a sex trafficking event in April, and lastly, an organ trafficking event in May. And lastly, make sure to follow us on social media. Our Instagram is at futureunchained_Toronto. Our website is futureunchained-unchained.org. And thank you to Taking It Global, the Government of Canada, and Canada Service Corps for funding this organization.